While financial aid has opened a lot of doors for both students around the nation and for students here at Colorado State University, it can still sometimes be a confusing process to go through.
Once you figure out what you have to do, it's relatively easy, but finding out what you have to do is a little bit complicated. I didn't reach out to the financial aid office. I kind of just did it by myself with my parents, but it's a little weird, and I've changed majors, and so that changes the financial aid I get, and so I have a little bit of more opportunities for financial aid in my new major, but that also comes with more requirements for FAFSA and the scholarship applications and stuff, and so that was also news to me. Found out once I had to reapply for CSUSA. And obviously, some of that is optional, but I'm trying to get the most amount of money as I can, so I don't have to take $20,000 worth of loans every year. But alas, it's looking like that's not going to be an option, but that's okay. My parents are small business owners, and so it's really important to me in order to not have them help me pay for college forever, And so as many loans as I can get is so valuable to me because my parents are still paying off their loans, and so it's just adding on to that.
I am first generation, so my mom doesn't have a degree, and then neither does my adopted dad either. So doing FAFSA, it was so difficult, to say the least. When you go on the FAFSA website, it's how to, and it's a little walk through WikiHow on how to do it. It's a lot of words, a lot of documents, and it's kind of confusing if you don't really have the resources or knowledge on how to do it.
This process of acquiring financial aid brings up the question of what really is financial aid and how can students work towards getting it.
Colleges and universities across the country and here in Colorado receive funds from different sources of different pots of funding. And so you have some from the federal government, you have some from the state government, you have some from private philanthropy. The federal contribution to universities like Colorado State University is typically in the form of financial aid. So many students will fill out what is called the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That is how the federal government calculates your unmet need, is typically the term. And what that is universities put out what is called the cost of attendance, right? And that is your tuition, your supplies, your books, your housing even, right? And then in the FAFSA, there is a federal formula, it's enshrined in law, that's called the Estimated Family Contribution, the EFC. And so essentially what your need is as a student is your cost of attendance minus your estimated family contribution, right? So let's say the cost of attendance to go to CSU, which it is not, is $10,000, right? And your estimated family contribution is $2,000. That means that you are eligible to receive up to $8,000 of aid.
Colorado state lawmakers are now considering implementing a free tuition guarantee to all low-income Colorado residents. This would be called the Colorado Promise.
I think that it's a great thing, but also my issue with FAFSA is it's so objective, I guess. I have such unique experiences with FAFSA, and if you check the wrong box or you say the wrong thing or you make $1 more, you went from having $15,000 to $200. And now with this plan, what are the details on it, and how definitive is it, and is it actually open to all students or only people that are hitting at that poverty line that Colorado marks it at? And how do other students get into it? Are the advisors going to help us out with this? Is there going to be counselors on campus? Where is the services that will answer all the questions that we have on it? Or is it going to be an email and you figure it out for yourself?
So Promise programs are one of these new kinds of programs that have been popping up over the last 10, 20 years. So they're actually, in some ways, an older trick than most people know. What counts as a Promise program is a program that, one, has an goal of increasing degree attainment among students. Typically, you're looking at traditionally aged college students to your 18 and 25-year-olds are most likely the target, and there's some kind of income threshold. But the idea is we want to increase degree attainment, and we want you to worry less about the tuition, the fees kinds of things. And that's an important distinction to think about with the Promise programs too, is that they really cover tuition and fees. They're not necessarily covering housing, supplies, books, all of those other costs that actually in some ways are bigger costs than the actual tuition itself.
Schools like the University of Northern Colorado and CU Boulder have already implemented Promise programs within their own institutions. While CSU doesn't have a set program yet, it is hoped that one will come in the future.
One, I think it takes time to build a promise program, right? And no institution wants to announce this kind of program and then say we can't cover it anymore. So one, I think it's about we're in this budget remodel that might be a possibility for the institution in the future. But two, that there is a low-income student grant, but essentially that I think that there are some ways that the institution tries to cover for aid, but it's still figuring out its budget model situation right now. We're going to be in that situation for the next year, 2 years. I think perhaps once we have figured out our strategic priorities, and if access is one of them, it wouldn't be surprising to me to see a promise programs pop up at Colorado State University.
Trying to pay for college can bring a lot of challenges into a student's life.
We can think about how do we try and create low-cost options and sort of hide these hidden costs to higher ed in all these different places. For students to be involved, sometimes they have to pay out of pocket to be part of meaningful things. Think about fraternities and sororities, right? You've got membership fees and dues to pay, right? So there's certain status symbol with that on campus, but that requires money to do, right? So how do we think about taking the money out of some of these really high impact opportunities for folks to get involved and to learn on campus? Because if you're hungry, if you're thinking about where you're trying to sleep the next night, if you're worried about paying your bill, you can't focus on learning, right? Or learning is going to come second or third, and learning should always be first.
So I'm out of state, so I wouldn't call it a balance. I haven't found a balance. I've been here 3 years. I work 35 to 40 hours, so I'm full time at my job, and that's just basic necessities for a living, and so it's stressful. People will be like, do you want to do something on the weekend, or there's a basketball game or a football game, and I don't have the means to request a day off or a week off or anything like that, so it's stressful to say the least, and budgets and planners are my best friend.
And remember that there are many different ways for students to get some money off of their tuition.
If there's a scholarship that you aren't 100% sure that you qualify for, apply anyway, because the worst thing that they can say is no. And that's just general life advice. The worst thing you can get is a no. So just look for money. Also there's a lot of outside organizations that you can apply for, and sometimes it's a project, sometimes it's not. But you can get a lot of those little ones, and those really stack up and help.
Ask around. That's going to be the biggest thing. If you're in high school, then ask your guidance counselors or your academic counselors, whatever you have. If they don't have the answers to that or the answers that you need or are looking for, send an email to your advisor at the college you're applying to. There's plenty of people that are willing to help out. It's just, who is it going to be?